Well, hello everybody, this is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to another Critique of the Week, so glad you could join me. Let's see, we got D. Coleman here and Clayton Clark. Nate Jacobs says aloha all the way from Hawaii, not too far from the town of Haiku. Everything is poetry, he says. That's great. Well, I hope you enjoy Hawaii, Nate. James Langford is here. Dick Westheimer is here over on YouTube. Terry R. and Cindy Gore are here as well. Let's see if we got anybody on Facebook yet. Five watchers on Facebook. No one said hi, or the comment section is not working. There's Sharon Ferrante. Hi, Sharon. Good to see you. Okay, so everything's working. Now, as always, this is the critique of the week. The point of the critique is to give that workshop experience to people who might not have access otherwise. So we look at poems like you would in a workshop at a college level or something. See what works, what doesn't. Share as many thoughts as you can in the comments. It's also the answer to the question I always get of, can I give feedback on submissions? Well, I can give the critique of the week once a week, and you can watch this for feedback and get an idea of what you think and submit your own poems. To submit your own poems for critique, all you have to do is use Submittable's Critique of the Week category. Send 2 poems. And I draw them randomly out of the hat. I say every month, but really I've been doing it once a week, every Tuesday night. But yeah, so join us, share your poems, put them up for review anytime you would like. Now we have 2 poets, as we usually do to this week, a typical week. And let's dive right into the poems. So let's see what we've got. Here is poem number 1. And this is Ode to the Capital, and the poet is Sara Abdulla. Here we go. Ode to the Capital. Seeing stars with parched mouth, volatile volition for choices to make, but making decisions these days is jumping off the carousel and onto a racing train with question for destination. Wind in my skin and floppling curls when I turn to check if any stop is it. Free falling down the grassy mesa across from Catholic University's regal inky blue basilica, and at the open mic down the road, dusk against a magician's sun setting in along with my migraine for too many gods and too many goddamn choices. Ricochet to being stoned into my bones on 18th Street's yuppie bar that smells like a generic sandboy's basement, and trying to remember if I've always been so woozy or if this cursed city turning me into a lush, lugging around incorrigible tummy bloat and the sense that I should be doing something new as I pirouette to another happy after hours, or yet another essay on why policymakers should care about the singularity when I'm having a hard time remembering if I ever cared about anything. But I can't explain that to the frat boys on the hill or to the drunk girls in the nightclub bathroom, or explain that I refuse to be defined by the career I trafficked everything for, and that what I lack in ambition I compensate for in the spirits I stole dumpster diving for meaning and burning all the way out. But the red, white, and blue fireworks every summer eve sure are something, and the June bugs cackling into the night make eye contact every time, and while the Sisyphean stair-stepper makes my thighs thunderous, I wonder if I've been acting like the boulder when really I've been Hades, faking a free fall when I've been condemning my whole damn self by defining it by everything I've given up. But it's too easy to dwell on loss instead of think about want, and in canon. Does Hades have choices to make? Hades bewitched the boulder I feigned apologies as, but can he write an eternity of remorse when he undergoes the spell? Will I sober up, suckling the chili lime powder off tortilla chips in the courtyard of this aseptic city's soul, and remember how to finish formatting science analyses again, and why I wanted to be an engineer of the machine, why I treasure watching clouds dissipate cotton candy-like between my gilded teeth, tortoiseshell Maine Coon in arms, and dead paramours between my eyes, record scratch back to the Amtrak when the conductor asks where I want to go and I say any stop. So very interesting poem there. The feels, I love just overall the feel of the poem because it's about riding on the Amtrak. And the whole poem feels like, doesn't it, like you're riding on a train and like the things go by. And sometimes they're fascinating and strange and surprising. And sometimes they're less so, but the train keeps rolling nonetheless. It's kind of the feel of the poem. And it fits really well with the subject matter of the poem. So it's kind of cool to start with. This is Ode to the Capital, and I like the title. Given some of the topics that come up here, I think the title really works. And calling it the Capital rather than like Washington, D.C. or wherever, I assume it's Washington, D.C. There enough to tell you that, right? I think. But leaving it generic like that, too, I kind of like the way that title is laid out. So I think that works. Yeah. Yeah, so Deborah T says a Washington, D.C. poem. Yeah, I'm not really all that familiar. I mean, the hill and certain references, make me think it's D.C. And so Deborah T says Washington, D.C. too, so she can confirm. Like, I don't know. I mean, if you knew D.C. better, you'd know 18th Street and stuff like that, but I don't know D.C. very well personally. Terry R says, woohoo, diagram these sentences, I dare you. I'm going to take a little drink of coffee, too, for a second. That is a real string to read. But yeah, so D. Coleman says, love generic Sandboy's basement. That's exactly what I was talking about, though. Like, lines like that Sandboy's basement just kind of fly by. And you're, like, sort of amazed, but then the poem keeps rolling on with no, like, time to pause and wait for it, which is kind of perfect for everything that's going on in this poem. So I really like the structure. Catholic U is in D.C. too, Deborah T says. Okay, yeah. So, but I like that it's generic. Because there's something about, I don't know, it just feels right. Like calling it the Capital makes it seem sort of larger than life in a way that fits, rather than calling it the specificity there loses a little bit of the mystery magic or something. So I like the title. Let's kind of go through line by line. There were some things that as I was reading, tripped over, and a couple things to kind of clean up maybe that are a little confusing. So it's one of these, I think this poem is pretty close though to ready to go. It's a pretty interesting poem, compelling, keeps my interest. There are a few times I tripped, slipped out a little bit. My mind wandered a little bit, and those are the things you got to avoid. But otherwise, it's very close to being ready poem, a little polishing up maybe. Seeing stars with parched mouth, volatile volition for choices to make, but making decisions these days. So here we do have commas. There's a comma even in the first line. The lack of comma here tripped me a little bit. I just add a comma there. Just a little helpful pause. So Dick Western says, so isn't Capitol the Capitol building? That could be. To me, I was thinking of, almost... use of capital almost in like a sci-fi type sense. Like this is the capital, like it's a big dominant, the machine itself. The whole machine is the capital. That's how I was thinking of it. But maybe it's just the Capitol building. I don't know. Let's see. So, but making decisions, just that pause there would help. But making decisions these days is jumping off the carousel and onto a racing train with, and I think the question mark, that's a little hard to read too, not knowing. I skimmed this poem before the broadcast, so I knew that was going to be a question, so I just read it as question. But the first time, you don't know if that's supposed to be a question mark, so you don't know to read it the way I did, reading out the word question, or if you should say, and on to a racing train with, like it's a question, and then for destination. You can't trip over that. So spell that out, and that will help. Spell it out. For a destination, wind on my skin, in my skin, and floppling curls. Is floppling a word? I love that, but I'm never, I'm not, there are a few words I want to look up, so we'll start with floppling. Is that actually a word, or is that something that was made up? Floppling. Let's see. Well, interesting. So floppling, according to transliteral, is a, where is it? Well, I don't know. I can't tell. So it's not really coming up floppling. Interesting. I like it though. Floppling curls. I mean, maybe it just is supposed to be flopping, but I like it floppling. Floppling curls when I turn to check if any stop is it. And again, this it was hard to read the first time too. It's capitalized. I think I would, I don't know, maybe italicize it or something. You're supposed to say like the stop is it. And it was a little hard to figure out how that was supposed to be read the first time reading through. So another one there, similar to that, just like keep your reader in mind and help us out a little as we're trying to navigate your poem, which is what all three of these corrections are, just a little bit of extra help for the reader to know how to read the words, and that's helpful. Free falling down the grassy mesa across from Catholic University's regal inky blue basilica. See, again, great description, the inky blue basilica. I've never seen Catholic University, but well described. Like I can see it in my head, even if I haven't seen it before myself. And at the open mic down the road, dusk against a magician's sun setting. See, a magician's sun. Like a lot of poets, a lot of poems we look at here would just say dusk against the sun. But a magician's sun evokes so much. It's a great use of that, just something unusual to sort of trigger your senses and make you think a little bit. But the train keeps rolling, and you see that magician's sun. You kind of wonder what the magician's sun is, but then you keep going, to the next interesting thing, and you don't really get to linger on it. And so there's this great effect. That's what I like about this poem, of interesting things passing by, setting in along with my migraine. And you see, we get to the migraine too. So this tells us a lot that the migraine's setting in as well. In such a quick transition from that sun to the migraine, both setting in. From too many gods and too many goddamn choices, ricochet to being stoned into my bones. On 18th, that stoned into my bones is a great, just the sound of that's fun. On 18th Street's yuppie bar that smells like a generic sad boy's basement. Did I say sand boy before? Sorry, sad boy's basement. Yeah, that's another good line. And trying to remember if I've always been woozy or if this cursed city turned me into a lush, lugging around incorrigible tummy bloat. Incorrigible tummy bloat. Just so many great lines. Or phrases anyway. And they just keep going. They just keep coming though. You don't get to stop and enjoy the scenes because the train doesn't stop. In the sense that I should be doing something now as I pirouette to another happy after hours or yet another essay on why policymakers should care about the singularity, when I'm having a hard time remembering if I ever cared about anything. But I can't explain that to the frat boys on the hill or to the drunk girls in the nightclub bathroom. Again, I can't, a lesser poem would end with I can't explain that to anybody. But then we get these two very specific visual examples of who anybody is. The frat boys on the hill, not just frat boys, but frat boys on the hill, or the drunk girls, not just drunk girls, but in the nightclub bathroom. Like that specificity is what makes the poem really come to life. Oops, I guess I meant to do it up here. but it just brings the details are what bring poems to life. And this is a good example of how that works. Or explain that I refuse to be defined by the career I trafficked. Again, trafficked is a great word for the career. Everything for, and that what I lack in ambition I compensate for, and the spirits I stole dumpster diving. Again, dumpster diving is great. For meaning and burning all the way out. But the red and white and blue fireworks every summer eve sure are something, and the June bugs cackling into the night make eye contact every time. And while the Sisyphean stair-stepper makes my thighs thunderous. All this is just great. I'd check it all. It's all good. My thighs thunderous. I wonder if I've been acting like the boulder when really I've been Hades, faking a free fall when I've been condemning my whole damn self by defining it by everything I've given up. I trip over that a little bit. This is one part where I felt like it was hard to read almost. Let's say, I wonder if I've been acting like the boulder when really I've been Hades, faking a free fall when I've been condemning my whole damn self by defining it by everything I've given up. It's a little too much, I think. I would ease up on this sentence a little bit and just kind of help us out. Maybe just with some commas or just make it a little less compact with things. But it's too easy to dwell on loss instead of letting think about want, and in canon. See this whole section I'm having trouble following, both on a syntactic level and like a meaning level. It's a little too, you're asking too much of us, I think. The Sisyphean, which is a hard word for me to say. I don't know if other people have trouble with Sisyphean stair stepper. I think that's a great line. But then when it gets into Hades, the free fall, and the condemning my whole damn self by defining it by everything. It's that the by and the by. It just make it hard to follow what's referring to what. But it's too easy to dwell on loss instead of letting, and then I feel like there should be something article, letting me think or letting you think or something. So that is a little tough to follow. About want and in canon. And I don't understand what want and in canon. Dwell on loss instead of letting, think about want and in canon. In canon, and that's like how would you define canon? Let me look up the literal definition. Jeez, Google's not very friendly to me today. So a general rule, principle, or criterion by which something is judged, a collection or list of sacred books accepted as genuine. Yeah, so I was just wondering if there was like an alternate definition. It kind of is, more than I was thinking about. Like I'm just thinking about in terms of canonical texts and things, but it's a general rule or principle determining what's canonical. So that does help to look that up. But what does that mean? On loss instead of letting, think about want and in canon. I'm not sure. I just don't know what that means. Does Hades have choices to make? Hades bewitched the boulder I feigned apologies as. I'm trying to find that too. Hades bewitched the boulder I feigned apologies as. I feigned apologies as the boulder. I don't know. I'm having trouble following just the logic of that. But can he write an eternity of remorse? When he undoes the spell, will I sober up? Suckling the chili lime powder off the tortilla chips again. That's great. So I don't want to say remove the Hades thing, because that's the heart of the poem. Like that's the discovery that the poem makes. Is this boulder, that's the central metaphor. It's this boulder that I've been hulking up the hill is sort of a lie somehow. But I don't think it's clear. I don't think it's been explained clearly enough. It's a little hard to follow. So the main thing of this poem is just to clean up this section right here and make it a little more clear what's going on with Hades and the boulder. I think maybe the issue, because it's a complicated metaphor, and it's like a revelatory metaphor that's central to the poem too. So I think you have to pull back from the wordplay and just the complexity of the sentences, the diagram, and just to let this become a little clear, because it's hard enough that the metaphor you're reaching for is hard enough to grasp that it needs to be a little more clear so we can get it too, I think. And then you can go back to the fun stuff, suckling the chili lime powder off tortilla chips in the courtyard. Is this another word I want to look up? Is aseptic. What does aseptic mean? Don't mind me, I just like learning. Free from contamination. So it's aseptic. Oh, okay, I get it. That makes sense. Free from contamination by harmful bacteria or viruses or organisms. Okay. Like sterile, or almost, but not with maybe the negative connotations. And remember how to finish formatting science analyses again, and why I wanted to be an engineer of the machine. I love the engineer of the machine. That's a good way to put it. Why I treasured watching clouds dissipate cotton candy-like between my gilded teeth. Again, that's great. Tortoiseshell Maine Coon in my arms. I think maybe, we'll skip some articles here, and I don't see what's gained. And dead paramours between my eyes. Yeah, just put the my in there. Records scratch back to the Amtrak when the conductor asks where I want to go, and I say any stop. I think it's a great ending, too. So this poem works really well. It's a lot of me talking to analyze it. Sorry for not looking at the comments. It's a dense, rich poem. But the one thing I just clean up a few little things to help us out, and then the clear up this Hades thing, and we'll see what everyone's saying. So Nate Jacobs says, I know who Hades is, but I really don't know the reference here to the story of Hades. I need to bone up on mythological characters. And yeah, maybe that's the problem. It's hard. Like, how does Sisyphus relate to Hades? Is that part of the same story? Did Hades send was it Hades who made Sisyphus have to carry the boulder up the mountain? And what? Yeah. I think maybe you require a little too much understanding of that story, and that's why it could be more clear. So tell us a little bit of the story of Hades and Sisyphus so that we know, get the whole connection within the poem. Maybe the admission price is a little too high for that section. But there are things just about the syntax, too, that make it difficult, too, which is interesting how that always, or tends to pop up anyway. When the poem starts to become unclear, the syntax starts to fall apart a little bit, too. So Karen Marker says, I don't think they're part of the same story. And Cindy Gore says it was Zeus who, punished Sisyphus, I assume. So I guess we're all just kind of confused about that. And Deborah T says, certainly working in Washington can feel Sisyphean. Why can I not say that? Sisyphean. And also like Hades in the underworld. But I agree it could be clear what is meant. Yeah, that's the only thing. Nate Jacobs says, it's a rather extraordinary moment when a conductor asks a train traveler where to. Yeah, I love that poem. I love the whole train feel of this. It's just a great poem, and there's so much rich detail and really interesting stuff, and interesting subject matter too. This questioning about the how did she put it, the career I've trafficked myself in, or whatever it was. Questioning that and the monotony of pulling the boulder up the hill every day. So Jimmy Papa says Sisyphus was in Hades. Hades is also the ruler of Hades, but the author is making a new story here. Yeah. So all it does, it just has to be made a little more clear so we can follow along. Because it's really interesting. It's definitely interesting concept and metaphor there. Let's see. Yeah, so Jenny Middleton says Sisyphus was cursed to push a boulder up an unending hill in the underworld, which is ruled over by Hades. Okay. And Sharon Francis, I think the Hades is just about the weight of it all. How is Hades faking a free fall? I guess that's where I don't understand. I guess maybe that's the heart of what I don't understand. Once I don't know why Hades is making a free fall, or faking a free fall, I mean, then I'm trying to like make sense of that with respect to everything else as we move through, and that's the thing I'm having trouble following. I think that's the heart of what it is. But also, want and in canon is something I just don't know. So it's not just a matter of piecing together the myth, that just the writing is unclear. And like I was saying, it's strange, but when the metaphor becomes unclear, a lot of times our writing becomes unclear as well. Susan Taylor said, I like how references to academia is sprinkled throughout, and maybe she studied philosophy and political science philosophy. Yeah, she sounds like a cool person to know. The capital, this is Mark Grenier, the capital is a place of sacrifice and abandonment of something important in life. Yeah. Anyways, this is a cool poem. I think that's all we have to say about it. Just clear that one up. Tom Barlow says, I give it an A. Wonderful poem, says Terry R. Yeah. Bob T says a little self-important, which is an interesting reaction. There is a sense of that a little bit, too. Nate Jacobs says, outside of Hades, this is one hell of a poem. That's funny. But it's true. I think it's great. Let's look at the other one. We don't have as much time to spend on this one, and it's longer, so we'll do our best. This is, and just see the comparison. A store-bought color will suffice. 12 weeks week, washing out the color in my face with 3 silver threads glimmering through black frizz. They say my new cheekbones are sexy, but the stress isn't, and I watch the male gaze judge my trauma responses while I run to catch public transit with the driver rolling his eyes but opening the doors in the middle. of traffic on the main road, and even without my glasses, I can see that the despair is aging poorly as I listen to songs to relapse to. At my desk with my laptop face down, lighting a joint, but I don't get high, just really low. I showered 4 times today, but put the same dirty clothes back on every time, and I think that's a good metaphor for recovery. But what I wanted after all this time was to be a runaway getaway renegade, dying for anything new, craving inky blue sea and eyes rimmed with coal and salt, forgetting my bikini and stripping to lace black underwear on a leaking pirate ship, giving up to wind and sand, picking a bouquet that's more thorn than flower, yellow pistol heart with red film coating my skin, sweet pollen, the first solids I've stomached in 8 days, licking my fingers to get every drop of this anything new, and all along I wanted to be a runaway, getaway renegade drinking cardamom coffees that tighten my neck and finally let me feel warm at the end of the summer, just in time to trick the Lord in Orthodox temples with billowing long white dresses, feeling like a charlatan but aren't us sinners, the emotionally vacant, the ones who need vapid prayers the most, written under the glowing candlelight, and emerald sunshine streaming in from stained glass windows. I pen, may God have mercy on us all. English blurred between Greek and Spanish and Russian scripts place it in an ornate bronze bowl at the altar while someone takes a selfie in front of the makeshift Holy Grail, and I snap into my body, desperately wanting out of it and out of my billowing long white dress and gladiator sandals. And now I haven't showered in 4 days, but at least I finally changed my dirty clothes, and that must be recovery, moving from lying on my dirty gray comforter to lying on a lounge chair in my apartment's courtyard, the survivant cicadas shrieking against cerulean ombre night, suffocating under the distinct maudlin scent of September. But now it's been 7 years to the moment since my glass home shattered one too many times, and I never felt safe again. Shards to nail classifieds, seeking answers to rhetorical questions, the ways to replace the immobilizing stench of carbon monoxide with one's purpureous jasmine and lavender, for yet another chance to slumber amidst lilac, nightmares at emergency, calls that my loved ones are missing, emails that my manuscript is 9 months overdue and counting, and it's symbolic that I could have held a baby to term while I was too busy brown girl shame spiraling and growing into a poet, drowning at the bottom of the Potomac, cinnamon spice cava blended river, crunk underwater, and listening to bubblegum sad girls dream of worlds worth staying awake in. And now I'm back in my dirty gray comforter with 2 laptops open and my eyes closed, nurturing a depression child birthed of nothingness, 3 silver curls and irretrievable memory while I plug my nose to rid myself of September, odor of cultural jet lag and turquoise water, crystalline cage and golden handcuffs, brilliant cobalt evil eyes my guardian angel left me while she opted for more wine. Useless talismans, futile against the curses lodged upon me while I blow weed smoke at the religious tapestries inside my home, phantasm of empires reduced to rubble islands of white bedrock, remains once glorious mansions and theaters that appear uncannily like headstones, etched with reliefs of lives of people who were runaway getaway renegades, who found God in the ocean and dazzling sky, telling me when I find myself intertwined with an ex-lover's navy-striped bedsheets, head clouded with congeners and rage, to try again. Interesting, Tom. So this is compelling in the same way the other poem is compelling. Someone mentioned over on Facebook, someone was saying, let's see. Someone was saying about how so Laurel Benjamin, with the other poem, was talking about how couplets or other groupings might allow white space and give the reader room to absorb the fine lines. And that was talking about Ode to the Capitol. And I was wondering, since I knew this was coming up and I glanced at it before, I was wondering how the feel, because they have the same kind of feel for style. And I was thinking that... that since we have this sort of train kind of thing that's just running on and we're kind of supposed to get lost in it, it feels right to have it not broken up into stanzas. But this poem has a similar feel to it. And the breaking up into stanzas, I think, kind of helps. Just add a little more white space and not feel so dragged down as we're reading. So maybe that is something to play with the first poem. Because I don't think it lost any of its energy for having the stanzas. Josh Williams says a sprawling stream of consciousness poem that could be several poems. So Laurel Benjamin says, I'm amending that because now seeing this other poem, no, it has no effect making groupings of lines. We need punctuation. Please use end stops. That's interesting because I was going to say, maybe think about it just because it doesn't have a change on the effect. I like the effect, so I wouldn't want to get rid of it. I like the incessantness and the urgency of and the speed of the poems. It's not everyone's style, of course. And I don't know, but it's great that we have all kinds of poems, and I like that there's some poems like this that just run and don't let up. I think it's a fun way to write, and the author here, Sara Abdulla, clearly has a lot of things to write about. Like there's no problem generating content. One thing I really don't like, and I've never seen it done well, is this kind of thing, to the point where if I see this in a submission, if like I'm flipping to the next poem or whatever in a submission, and I see this kind of thing out of the corner of my eye looking down the page, I'm like, oh no, because it's just the effect of this, the spelling out and the making the text sort of do what the words are doing, kind of conflating that like the text with the meaning. The effect is to pull you out of the poem. So you're sort of inhabiting, and what a poem really is inhabiting the body of the speaker, or the speaker inhabiting your body more precisely. And so there's this like almost, what do they call it? When you're like doing a seance and you're like, becoming someone else, the spirit's like leaping inside of the seance person. What do they call that? Inhabitation or something? I don't know. But that's the experience of a poem, is like somebody else sort of jumping over and taking over the controls of your body. And when there's something like this that happens, where it pulls you back to the text and reminds you that you're reading a poem on paper, and these are, squiggles of text, it pulls out that effect. So it's like the spirit that's inhabiting your body, like leaves you for a second. And you just lose the momentum of that sort of magical merger of spirit or something. And so it just never works to me. It always pulls me out of the text, and it pulls me out of the voice. And so I would avoid that. I've never seen it done in a way that I think works. Maybe that's just me. I always wonder. But you rarely see, really successful or, established, I guess, poets doing it. So maybe eventually people don't think it works either. Just to be frank, it's a thing that if I see out of the corner of my eye, it makes me think like a novice type poet who's just starting out playing with something. There's like an E. Cummings type thing, but E. Cummings is doing his own thing. And there's, different language poets who are playing specifically with that thing. But when you're running through a narrative in somebody's voice, it's not the same thing as playing with a language in the way those language poets were doing. So I would avoid doing that, just letting the poem run through. I'm assuming that Despair is a band, and Songs to Relapse To is an album. But I don't know. Let's see. Maybe not. Maybe this is something that's more creative and made up. Yeah, it's not coming up, so I think it's just something that that the poet was making up, which is really interesting. And I love this recurring runaway, getaway, renegade, which sounds like a lyric to the song and the made-up album, or maybe it's real. Yeah, so Jimmy Pappas with this says the high and the low is something I saw in high school. And there's just no other way to say it. It feels like high school when people are doing that. And you don't want your poem to feel that way. Playing with that, if you're doing it through the whole poem, and there's certain things that you're doing and you're calling attention to that for a reason, then it can work. In theory, I mean, every sort of rule is made to be broken. If you can find a way to make it work, go ahead. Yeah. So Tom Barla says, I wonder if poems that use space for such gimmicks are rejected by editors because it demands extra pages they could use otherwise to run more poems. I do think about that all the time. Like if we publish if we have a 5-page poem, you know, I mean, that every time we publish one, I think, well, this is 4 other poets that we can't publish 1-page poems for, you know? And so drawing something out. But if it works, what have we had? Have we had something with a lot of white space? I don't know if we have. If the poem, it's sort of like the poem has to justify its own existence, the space it's occupying. And so in theory it could. The poem that got, the one I keep thinking of is the poem that got Poetry Magazine into trouble, the Michael Dickman poem. It goes on for like 23 pages or something in that issue of Poetry. And each section is sort of, it only takes up like a fifth or maybe even less, a 10th of the page. So it goes, it's only like really a 2-page poem, but it stretches for 22 pages. And I remember thinking when that controversy was going on that I think that the space is more controversial than the content. But let's see. But yeah, so I would avoid that. Dick Westheimer says Poetry Mag, which I was just talking about, often has poems with alternative lineation and spacing, but I'm rarely a fan. Yeah, I mean, there's ways it can be done. But to do it in a poem that's working on this level, which is this stream of, someone already mentioned the stream of consciousness. I mean, it's just really simple. It pulls you out of the stream of consciousness. And it's a stream of consciousness poem. And maybe there's the argument that you want to be pulled out because it's a relapse thing and that's the effect you're getting, but I don't think it works. Attractive Fahey says, I found this poem very intense and too long. I kept trying to chase it. A lot of abstraction, great lines, but maybe we don't need so much detail. Yeah, I think, I have to disagree just because there's room for all sorts of kinds of poems. And this kind of maximalism, well, I'm glad that not every poem is like this. I'm glad that some poems are like this. And so I didn't have a problem with the length. There is a sense that it's very similar to the last poem. And I think a whole book of poems like these might be a little like too much, like too much chocolate cake or something. Well, I don't know, but one poem standing on its own, I didn't have a problem with it. I like the journey and both these poems. I think the other one is tighter and closer. This kind of meanders a little more and maybe could be cut to the similar length. Maybe, a page and a half it wants to be, trimmed down a little bit. But anyway, we have to move on, I think, to the next poems. But these are great. Like, I really found these, I wish I could dig in more into the second one, too. We're just out of time. But they're great content in both of these. Let's see. I want to make sure I get every comment that's still here, though. Mark Goodner says the title of the second poem, which I didn't mention, doesn't make any sense to me. Store-bought color will suffice. I think it means like fake happiness or fake emotion or fake, like I can buy what I'm looking for. I think it fits to me. Jamie Milton says, I think this poem reads like a dramatic monologue. I think it shows the busyness of a mind. Yeah, I agree. That's what I think works about it. And Sidney Putnam Guntherman mentioned the cutesy printing of the words as she put it on the page. Mark Gunner says, as a reader trying to extract meaning, I need more help. Yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna have to move on, but very interesting work here. I really enjoyed these two poems. So thanks for sharing these, Sarah. Sorry we can't help a little more with this poem. It's just too much to cover in half an hour plus. But the other poem, I think, is a really kind of quick fix to clarify a little bit and add a little bit of help. One of those, maybe an hour with it will be done. Now we're going to look at the next poem. And here we go. This is Nabie Tarawally. We have two poems here, Emotions, the other one in 43, and Snake Juice 77. And I mentioned that because you might wonder what the 43 is. I think that's a convention of, like, maybe that's the 43rd poem Nabie wrote. I'm not sure, but I don't know if you should try to look too much into the meaning of that. I think it's more of a label. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a sense of what it is after reading these two more closely. But this is Emotions 43. I have emotions, but they don't rule my life. A calm exterior is superior to an interior full of stress and strife. I have emotions, but they are under control. Most of the time my heart burns and pumps lava, but my face remains cold. I have emotions, but there is no shame in a man feeling pain. But for the sake of the tribe, masculine frame must and will be maintained. I have emotions, but they are far away like the two former loves of my life. Going forward, I swear to never get married, so I will not have a wife. I have emotions deeper than the darkest depths of any ocean, but I keep my feelings shallow so not to raise any suspicions or cause any new commotion in the ocean. I have emotions, but they stop progress and bring constriction to motion. Rationality multiplied by practicality divided by spirituality is the formula of my devotion. I have emotions, but I really don't need to say it anymore. In this world of life, breath, and then death, can someone tell me exactly what they are good for? And that is Emotions. Interesting little journey here. The rhyme really stands out because they're all, even though there's no line breaks, they're all like full stop end rhymes. And so that the problem with that is that it gets repetitive, like you know what to expect. And talking to the most interesting person to talk about this with on the Rattlecast was Jamie Hecht, way back in one of those old episodes where the quality wasn't that great. It might be episode like 12 or something. But he's a psychotherapist as well as a poet and a political writer too. And he was talking about the way that sort of the dopaminergic, what do you call it, that mechanism is about expectation and then diversions from expectation. So you sort of set up something and then having it be a little different once the pattern is established is what we're drawn to, because we're always trying to learn, like just at a deep fundamental level. And so there's a pleasure system, that dopaminergic system, that helps with learning. I mean, that's the foundation of learning. And so we find it pleasurable to have these sort of patterns set up and then that expectation be subverted slightly, but have the pattern still there, which is why like classical music works. They'll set up some pattern and then they'll have the ways that it's altered and transformed and changed over time. It's how classical music really operates. And so that's how formal poetry should operate, because that's playing on this. And so a poem that has life and strife just ending in everything has control and cold and pain maintained, with the end stops there. It just gets repetitive and doesn't have that. It's like the opposite effect. Like you're habituated to the pattern, and then you aren't given any pleasure from the deviation. So, so writing in this style always ends up feeling flat. And that's the problem with really sing-songy verse too, is that it always ends up feeling flat. So the style, I would play more with varying these things up. Putting the rhyme somewhere different and ending and maybe like bleeding over within jam into other stanzas just to mix it up a little more. Let's see. Yeah, so my granny says each stanza is 2 sentences, why not 2 lines? The rhymes are a bit much. Over on Facebook, Karen Marker points out the style is so different from the earlier poem. Yeah, it couldn't be more different. But Deborah T, the content is a bit too repetitive. Jimmy Puppet says, I like a rhyme like control and cold better than life and strife. And that's the thing I was talking about. Control and cold are at least different enough that you can get some kind of pleasure out of it in that system. Jimmy Puppet says it also has ocean and ocean, which is not a rhyme, just repeating the words. I guess it was commotion spelling. And then Clayton Clark says there are a lot of cliches too. Images could help, just abstraction. Yeah, so let's look at this a little bit more line by line. Emotions, 43, and I think 43 is just like 43rd poem. I have emotions, but they don't rule my life. A calm exterior is superior to an interior full of stress and strife. So I think, you know, with all the wordplay here, because we don't just have life and strife. We also have the exterior, superior, interior, that thing in the middle. It could establish a kind of, I'm playing with sound a lot in this poem, but then it has to continue playing with it. So, sorry I didn't hit the cough button. So you have to, just vary and mix up that and have strange things like this little run right here all over the place. And that would work as a poem better than the pattern, the repetitiveness of this. I have emotions, but they are under control. Most of the time, my heart burns and pumps lava, but my face remains cold. The heart burns. Hearts are things. We're talking about some cliches in there. The heart's kind of cliche. The pumps lava. It's not quite a cliche, but it's bordering on that. I have emotions, and there is no shame in a man feeling pain. And so here's a nice thing, because we get shame in a man feeling pain, the rhyme, and there ends up being an extra rhyme there. But then we still get a full stop and reestablish that pattern. And so there needs to be a lot more of this. There's a few moments where we're playing with the rhymes in different ways, but mostly throughout the poem, it's just that same rhyme structure. And it just needs a lot more. Yeah, so Jimmy Papa says playing with sound would work better. I agree. Let's see. I have emotions, but there's no shame in a man feeling pain. But for the sake of the tribe, masculine frame must and will be maintained. I have emotions, but they are far away like the two former loves of my life. Going forward, I swear to never get married, so I will not have a wife. Like, at this point, it feels like the whole sentence is being written just so it comes up with a rhyme. There's not this feeling of, like, natural speech to it. Attractive Faye, he says, I like the repetition if the sentences were a bit stronger. Great rhyme and assonance, too, could be written as a villanelle or duplex. More images, maybe. Yeah. I have emotions deeper than the darkest depths of my ocean, but I can keep my feelings shallow so as not to rise any suspicion or cause any new commotion in the ocean. And the ocean, like Jimmy Pappas mentioned, the ocean kind of repeats and doesn't really rhyme. And it's unnecessary. I mean, if you're going to have that, just keep it commotion. I have emotions, but they stop. So another thing, too, is there's this repetition of just the structure of I have emotions. And that needs some variation, too. Like, as soon as you establish a pattern, you got to break the pattern. I have emotions, but they stop progress and bring constriction to motion. Rationality implied by practicality divided by spirituality is a formula to my devotion. Now, that might be a favorite line. I like that. Rationality multiplied by practicality divided by spirituality. That's pretty cool. I have emotions, and I really don't need to say it more. In this world of life, breath, and then death, can someone tell me exactly what they are good for? Yeah, and so because of this repetitiveness, it's the I have emotions, I have emotions, I have emotions. There's a feel like it's written like an early essay, like a high school essay, that 5-paragraph essay style where someone just going through the motions have been given an assignment, to explain emotions or something. There's that feel to it where it's just never allowed itself to stray into something surprising. So the topic here, like I would say, pick the most interesting section, which maybe to me I like the. I do like that. I do like this one. And maybe like run with this one and try to branch off in a different way to make something surprising happen. Let's see. Deborah T says, emotion poem is quite abstract, makes me curious about the story or stories behind the statements, the specifics instead of the general. And yeah, I mean, that's a main thing, and we saw it so much with the other poem, is that how compelling and just detail draws you in and makes you feel that inhabited kind of feeling. Attractive Face says that's one of the things that I struggle with when sticking to form. I start writing lines just to get the poem to rhyme, then I discard it. Yeah, the people who write in form use the form to pull them through into things they didn't realize they were thinking about. That's kind of the way form is used as a tool, like a scaffolding, a lot of times, to pull you into something surprising. But if you're writing just to make the form, it doesn't really work. Jimmy Papa says, I don't think I can find a specific detail in the poem, just too abstract. And yeah, I think maybe the reason why I like this is at least it's unusual and there's some specificity because it's in a formula. But there seems like there's stories behind this and we never get any sense of the story. Let's look at the other poem. We'll see if it's similar or not. This is Snake Juice 77, which again I think is just a numbering system. But snake juice, I think, is the first concrete thing. There's really nothing. Everything was abstract, as people pointed out in the other poem. But snake juice, all of a sudden, we have something concrete. So let's see what we do with that. There's snakes in those waters. I suggest you don't take a dip. Those people aren't for you, and they won't go for the catch if you slip. Reptiles hiding in plain sight, only shedding their skin at night. Always thinking with one side of their brain, and they absolutely hate a fair fight. Their hearts pump venom, and their souls are full of hate, laying in wait for an unsuspecting sucker to fall for the bait. They are poisonous to the end, specifically to family and friends. Either finish you on sight or come back for the final bite. It all depends. They're cold-blooded assassins always looking for the next thing to attack. I'm surprised they still find new acquaintances to eventually stab in the back. Snakes can never be trusted or left alone with your significant other. Turn a blind eye, they might sleep with even your father or your mother. Snakes can migrate from state to state, so their hustle never gets old. No emotional connection to any of their victims. No wonder their blood is so cold. There's snakes in these waters. Now you know what to do. Keep yourself and trust no one. Don't let these snakes get the best of you. So as Jimmy Pappas mentions, this title makes me want to read it. It's a good title. And then it has much more concrete imagery and much more detail than the last poem. So I think this works much better, but it's got the same problem with that repetitive nature of the setup and with words, lines being written just for the rhyme. So what we want to do is push past that and establish things. And we've just talked about this before, but establish things and then change them and mix them up and stuff. Tom Barlow says echoes of Dr. Seuss. I'm trying to think of... there was something I was thinking of when I was reading this. It was not Dr. Seuss. I'm drawing a blank, though, what it was. But there is a way, I think, if you could go in that sort of Dr. Seuss type direction by pulling it and making it more tight. But still, if you read Dr. Seuss, there's still surprising variations in the way that the structure goes. So I wish I could think of an example of a poem I'm thinking of. I'm not sure. Yeah, but So Dick Westheimer says here, slint rhyme should help one discover where the poem wants to go, what writing it is revealing to you. Yeah, and exactly. I mean, that's the thing. So it's written toward the rhyme instead of using the rhyme as like as a boost, when poems rhyme, they should be rhyming toward surprising yourself rather than being written toward the rhyme. If that makes sense, because that's what really, it goes back to that whole no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader, that kind of thing, where you have to be surprising yourself as you're going to make us surprised. If you can see where the poem is going from the beginning, whether that comes from the story that it's telling, having a conclusion that we can predict, or just the rhyme scheme, having a conclusion, having a system that we can predict that just keeps repeating, that you have to be able to surprise yourself in some way. And so, using the rhyme to get to someplace surprising should be the goal for a poem, because it makes you think of words that you wouldn't have thought of. And that makes you think of things that you wouldn't have thought of. And then it ends up being this kind of way of hacking your way through the forest to find something surprising. And so that's what I would focus on here. Snake Juice is a great title. There's snakes in those waters. I suggest you don't take a dip. And so this has to start, this has a voice. And it's interesting. I'm engaged. So if maybe you could run kind of with this voice, someone speaking, there's snakes in those waters. But then we get this abstraction to those people aren't for you, and they won't go for the catch if you slip. And the go for the catch if you slip is just to get the rhyme with dip. But what if we continued just with this guy's speech, the speaker here? There's snakes in those waters. Like, who's speaking? Like channel that voice and then make the rhymes pull through that. Clayton Clark says, I'd like to see a little change. The snake and idea stays the same. Could do a lot with this, though. Yeah. I like the topic of the poem. It is important. There's something important beneath the surface. No pun intended. Let's see. Mark Greener says both these poems are very didactic. And that's another way of saying what I was talking about. Like the thing with being didactic is that you're not surprising yourself. You're presenting a kind of speech, moralizing or whatever, telling us something that you wanted to tell us to start with. And you're not sort of exploring and investigating an idea in the process of writing. You're not trying to figure out what the problem is with Snake Juice and people like this. You're just trying to preach to us, to tell us what the problem is, like you already know. And that's just not as interesting as exploring something. Yeah. Okay, well, that is the hour. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. I think it's going to wrap it up. So we looked at a couple poems. These are Snake Juice and Emotions. And so, for both of these, just get some more, break up the rhyme, have the rhyme be surprising, and get a little more concrete. Those are the two suggestions for these poems. Then we had Ode to the Capital by Sara Abdulla, which is very close. I think, just a wonderful poem. Really good, just a little bit of clarity. And then another great poem we couldn't talk too much about because there was talk so much about the other one, Store-Bought Color Will Suffice. But great style, great details throughout. Really interesting stuff. So thanks for sharing these, both of you, Sara. And who's the other poet? Oh, Nabie. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing those. That is the critique of the week for today. Let's look at next week's guest on the old Rattlecast on Monday is going to be Gary Fine and Elizabeth S. Wolfe. That is the two people behind Prisoner Express for us. So Gary Fine was the founder of Prisoner Express, the program out of Ithaca, New York, that sends reading material and has like a newsletter and ways to share poems for prisoners. And then Elizabeth Wolfe started participating with that project using her chapbook, Did You Know? She sent them, she sent hundreds of copies in to prisons through Prisoner Express and invited people to write their own chapbooks telling the stories of their lives. And so a couple hundred people, I think, wrote in and shared chapbooks. And then we picked some of the poems for the feature in Rattle number 76 this summer, the tribute to Prisoner Express. So they're going to be on here sharing more poems from prisoners and talking about the project and what it means and how important it is. Also the difficulties behind it, because there's some challenges too. So we'll talk about all that. the program, about the poems, share more poems work, and we'll see how it goes. That is going to be Rattlecast number 156. The prompt for this week was to take a snippet of dialogue that you overhear at some point, and I wish, because I was out a lot yesterday, I wish I'd thought more about it, but I forgot, so I wasn't really paying attention to dialogue. But take a snippet of dialogue that you overhear sometime this week and write a poem about that. Use that as the spark to start a poem. That was Katie Porter's prompt from last week. So check that out, and then join us for the open lines after talking to Gary Fine and Elizabeth S. Wolf, Rattlecast number 156, the regular time, Monday, August 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you then. Hope you have a great weekend. In the meantime, I will talk to you later. Goodbye.